I'm standing outside the Chiang Mai Provincial Court on a Wednesday morning in March, watching through the glass doors as Kanya is led into the courtroom in handcuffs. And the satisfaction I feel is cold and precise, not the hot anger I'd felt 6 months earlier when I discovered she'd stolen $85,000 from me, but the calculated triumph of someone who'd spent half a year methodically destroying the woman who'd tried to destroy him. She sees me through the glass, and her face goes pale, and I smile at her, not a friendly smile, but the smile of a man who'd promised himself that she would regret every lie she'd told, every dollar she'd stolen, every moment she'd spent thinking she was smarter than the 60-year-old American IT consultant she'd chosen as her mark. My name is John Harris. I'm 60 years old, and I spent 35 years working in information technology, specializing in cybersecurity and digital forensics. I know how to find people who don't want to be found. I know how to track digital footprints. I know how to compile evidence that stands up in court. And when Kanya decided to scam me out of $85,000, she made the catastrophic mistake of targeting someone with both the skills and the resources to fight back. This isn't a story about a lonely old man who got scammed and slunk home defeated. This is a story about what happens when a professional criminal targets the wrong victim, someone who refused to be a victim, who turned the tables completely, and who made sure that the woman who tried to ruin his life spent 8 months in a Thai prison instead. But it started the way all these stories start, with loneliness, hope, and a beautiful woman who seemed too good to be true. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. I turned 60 in September, sitting alone in my Seattle apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and wondering when exactly my life had become so empty. I'd spent 35 years building a successful career in information technology, starting as a junior programmer in the early 90s, working my way up through various tech companies, and eventually becoming an independent IT security consultant earning over $200,000 annually. The work had been engaging and lucrative, but it had consumed everything else. My marriage to Susan ended 3 years ago after 28 years together. There was no dramatic affair or bitter conflict, just the slow realization that we'd become strangers who shared a house. Our daughter Michelle was 32 and living in Portland with her husband and 2 kids, absorbed in her own life. Our son David was 28 and working for a tech startup in San Francisco, too busy climbing the corporate ladder to call his father more than once a month. The divorce settlement was straightforward. Susan got the house in Queen Anne, I got the larger share of our investments, and we parted ways with minimal animosity. I moved into a downtown apartment, continued taking consulting contracts, and saved aggressively, planning for retirement. By the time I turned 60, I had approximately $400,000 in liquid assets, a small but adequate pension from my years at Microsoft, and absolutely no reason to stay in Seattle. The tech industry had changed. Younger developers with cheaper rates were taking the contracts I used to command premium prices for. The city had become impossibly expensive. The weather was perpetually gray, and I was profoundly, crushingly lonely. I'd tried dating after the divorce, but dating in your late 50s as a tech guy with no hobbies beyond computers is brutal. The women I met seemed to want adventure and spontaneity, qualities I'd never possessed. The few relationships I attempted fizzled out within weeks, both parties recognizing we had nothing meaningful in common. It was during one of these gray Seattle evenings in October that I started seriously researching international retirement. I traveled extensively for work conferences in Singapore, Tokyo, London, Sydney, but always briefly, always for business. I'd never simply lived somewhere else, experienced a different culture without the pressure of meetings and deadlines. Thailand appeared repeatedly in my research. The country offered affordable living, excellent healthcare at a fraction of US costs, reliable internet for staying connected, and a large expat community. Most intriguingly, Thailand had a retirement visa specifically designed for people like me, foreigners over 50, with adequate savings who wanted to live there long term. I spent 2 months researching obsessively, reading expat forums, watching YouTube videos, studying cost of living analyses. Chiang Mai particularly appealed to me, a city in northern Thailand, known for its lower costs compared to Bangkok, its comfortable climate, and its thriving community of foreign retirees and digital nomads. In December, I made the decision. I would retire to Chiang Mai. I gave notice to my remaining clients, sold my apartment, liquidated my remaining US assets, and booked a one-way ticket to Thailand for early January. Michelle was supportive but worried. "Dad, are you sure about this? Thailand is so far away. What if you hate it? What if something goes wrong? Then I'll come back," I said, more confidently than I felt. "But Michelle, I'm 60 years old and I'm miserable. I have money saved and no obligations. If not now, when?" She couldn't argue with that logic. David barely responded to my announcement, sending a brief text saying, "Sounds cool, good luck." When I boarded that flight to Bangkok in January, I felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. I was walking away from everything familiar, my city, my country, my career, and betting my comfortable retirement on the hope that Thailand would offer something better than what I was leaving behind. I arrived in Chiang Mai on a Tuesday afternoon in January, stepping off the plane into warm sunshine that felt like a blessing after months of Seattle's gray dampness. The airport was small and manageable, immigration was straightforward, and within an hour, I was in a taxi heading toward the serviced apartment I'd arranged for my first month. Chiang Mai surprised me immediately. I'd expected something more third world, more chaotic. Instead, I found a clean, organized city with modern infrastructure, excellent coffee shops, reliable internet, and a cosmopolitan atmosphere created by the mix of Thais, expats, and digital nomads. The old city was surrounded by ancient walls and a moat, creating a clearly defined historic center filled with temples, markets, and traditional wooden houses. My serviced apartment was in the Nimmenhamen area, a trendy neighborhood popular with expats and younger Thais. The apartment was small but modern, with high-speed internet, air conditioning, and a small balcony overlooking the street. The rent was 12,000 baht monthly, about $360, which was less than I'd paid weekly in Seattle. I spent my first week simply settling in and exploring. I found a gym, located the nearest grocery stores, discovered coffee shops with good Wi-Fi, and began mapping out the city. The cost of living was everything the forums had promised. A restaurant meal cost $2 to $3, a massage was $8, a beer was $1.50. My initial calculations suggested I could live very comfortably on about $1,500 monthly, which meant my $400,000 in savings could potentially last decades. But despite the comfortable circumstances, I was lonely. I'd expected the expat community to be welcoming, but I discovered that most social groups were already established, with tight circles of friends who'd known each other for years. Coffee shops were full of younger digital nomads focused on their laptops, not interested in chatting with a 60-year-old retiree. It was this loneliness that led me to Facebook groups. I joined several expats in Chiang Mai digital nomads, American expats in Thailand, and began reading daily, absorbing information about visa requirements, healthcare options, and local events. I met Kanya through one of these groups in late February, about 6 weeks after I'd arrived in Thailand. I'd posted a question asking for recommendations about purchasing a scooter, whether it was worth buying or if rental made more sense for a long-term resident. Several people responded with helpful advice, and among them was a comment from someone named Kanya. Her profile photo showed an attractive Thai woman in professional attire, a blazer and white blouse, taken in what appeared to be an office setting. Her comment was thoughtful and well-written, explaining the pros and cons of buying versus renting and offering to help me navigate the purchase process if I decided to buy. "I work at a hotel," she wrote, "so I know many people in the tourism and rental business. If you need help, please feel free to message me. Welcome to Chiang Mai." Her English was excellent, and unlike some of the other responses which were brief and dismissive, hers felt genuinely helpful. I sent her a private message thanking her for the advice, and we began chatting. Over the following 2 weeks, Kanya and I exchanged dozens of messages. She asked about my background, why I'd come to Thailand, what I thought of Chiang Mai so far. I explained my IT career, my recent divorce, my desire for a simpler life in a warmer climate. She shared details about her own life working as a receptionist at a boutique hotel near the old city, living with her younger sister, studying English in her spare time to improve her career prospects. What impressed me most was that Kanya seemed educated and ambitious, completely different from the bar girl stereotypes I'd been warned about. She talked about her goals, maybe opening her own small guest house someday, maybe studying tourism management. She asked intelligent questions about American culture, about technology, about my work experience. She sent occasional photos, a selfie at her hotel desk, a picture of a meal she'd cooked, a photo from a weekend trip to Doi Suthep Temple. Everything about her online presence suggested stability and respectability. After 2 weeks of messaging, Kanya suggested we meet for coffee. I agreed immediately, excited but nervous. We met at a cafe near Nimmenhamen, and Kanya was exactly as her photos suggested, petite, professionally dressed in dark slacks and a cream blouse, with a warm smile and confident demeanor. We talked for over 3 hours that afternoon. Kanya was engaging and curious, asking about my life in Seattle, my work, my family. She laughed at my clumsy attempts to speak Thai and taught me proper pronunciation. She explained Thai culture and customs, helping me understand social rules I'd been unconsciously violating. What struck me most was that she didn't seem to want anything from me. She insisted on paying for her own coffee. When I suggested dinner later that week, she agreed but made clear we'd split the bill. There was nothing transactional about her behavior, nothing that suggested she viewed me as a potential source of money. We began meeting regularly, coffee twice a week, occasional dinners, a weekend trip to Pai, a nearby mountain town popular with tourists. The relationship developed naturally, progressing from friendship to something more intimate over the course of several weeks. By April, 2 months after we'd first messaged, Kanya and I were effectively dating. She'd introduced me to her sister. I'd met some of her co-workers, and we were spending most of our free time together. She stayed over at my apartment occasionally, though she maintained her own place and her own independence. I was happier than I'd been in years. Thailand had delivered everything I'd hoped for: comfortable living, pleasant weather, and most surprisingly, genuine companionship with a woman who seemed to appreciate me for who I was rather than what I could provide. I should have known it was too good to be true, but I was 60 years old and lonely, and Kanya made me feel valued in ways my ex-wife never had. So I ignored the small warning signs, the occasional requests for small loans that were always repaid, the vague details about her family situation, the slight inconsistencies in her stories that I rationalized away. It was in May, 3 months into our relationship, that Kanya first mentioned the guest house dream. We were having dinner at a restaurant near the night bazaar, and Kanya seemed quieter than usual, almost melancholy. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "I've been thinking about my future. I'm 32 years old, working at a hotel reception desk, and I'm not saving any money. My sister depends on me for support, and I send money to my parents in the village. At this rate, I'll be working reception until I'm old, with nothing to show for it. What would you rather be doing?" Kanya's eyes lit up slightly. "I've always dreamed of having my own small guest house. Nothing big, maybe 8 or 10 rooms, a small cafe for guests. Chiang Mai has so many tourists, and there's always demand for clean, affordable accommodation. But starting a business requires capital I don't have." It was the first time she'd mentioned anything requiring significant money, and my IT security instincts activated immediately. I'd read dozens of stories about Thai women who convinced foreign men to invest in businesses that never materialized, but I also genuinely cared about Kanya, and her dream seemed reasonable and achievable. "How much would something like that cost to start?" I asked carefully. Kanya pulled out her phone, showing me research she'd apparently been doing, listings for small guest houses for sale, estimates for renovation costs, calculations of potential revenue. If I could find an existing small guest house that needed renovation, maybe 2 to 3 million baht total investment, that's about 60 to 90,000 US dollars. "But John, I'm not asking you for money. I'm just explaining why I've been feeling sad lately." The disclaimer made her seem more trustworthy. She wasn't pushing for investment, just sharing her frustrations. Over the following weeks, we discussed the guest house idea several times, always initiated by me rather than her. I was intrigued by the business potential, and my IT background made me confident I could evaluate whether such an investment made sense. By June, I'd convinced myself that investing in a small guest house business made both romantic and financial sense. Kanya and I were serious. She'd started referring to me as her husband in Thai, though we weren't formally married. Building a business together would give us both purpose and potentially generate income that would make our relationship more financially balanced. "Let me help you do this," I said one evening. "We'll find a property together, renovate it properly, and run it as partners. I'll provide the capital, you'll handle daily operations, and we'll split the profits." Kanya's reaction was emotional and seemingly genuine. She cried, insisting it was too much, that she couldn't accept such generosity. "This isn't charity," I said. "It's an investment. I have money sitting in accounts, earning minimal interest. Investing in a property in Chiang Mai makes financial sense, and doing it with you makes personal sense." After several days of discussion, Kanya agreed. We would become business partners, opening a small guest house together. She would handle the Thai legal aspects, property registration, licensing, hiring staff, while I would provide capital and help with technology, infrastructure, marketing, and website development. We started looking at properties immediately. Kanya identified several possibilities: small guest houses that were struggling or had closed, properties that needed renovation but had good locations. We visited each one, and I evaluated them with the analytical skills I'd developed over decades in business. The property we eventually selected was a 2-story guest house in the old city, just a few blocks from the Sunday walking street market. It had 10 rooms, all outdated and needing significant work, but the location was excellent and the structure was sound. The asking price was 1,800,000 baht, about $54,000, which seemed reasonable for the location. But there was a complication. Thai law prevents foreigners from owning land directly. The property would need to be purchased through a Thai company or in a Thai citizen's name. Kanya explained this carefully, showing me information from legal websites explaining the restrictions. "The safest way is to create a company where I own 51% and you own 49%, she explained. "Thai law requires majority Thai ownership, but you'd be protected through shareholder agreements that give you control over major decisions. Many foreign business owners use this structure." It was legitimate. I'd researched Thai property law extensively and knew this was indeed the standard arrangement, but it required trust. I'd be putting my money into a company structure where Kanya had majority ownership on paper. "I need to consult with a lawyer," I said. "I want to make sure we have proper contracts and protections." "Of course," Kanya agreed immediately. "We should absolutely use a lawyer. This is a big investment, and everything should be done properly." Her willingness to involve legal counsel reassured me significantly. We hired a lawyer recommended by the expat community, a Thai attorney who specialized in foreign business registration. He prepared comprehensive documents, articles of incorporation, shareholder agreements, loan agreements that documented my investment. "These documents protect you," the lawyer explained. "While Kanya owns the majority of shares, the shareholder agreement requires your approval for any major decisions, and the loan agreement secures your investment against the property." It all seemed properly structured. In July, 3 months after Kanya first mentioned the guest house dream, I transferred 1,800,000 baht, $54,000 into the company account for the property purchase. The purchase proceeded smoothly. Kanya handled all the Thai paperwork, coordinating with the seller and government offices, while I waited nervously for confirmation. Within 2 weeks, we had official ownership documents, and the guest house was legally owned by our company. Phase 1 was complete. Now came renovations, equipment purchases, and licensing, all of which would require significant additional investment. With the property purchased, renovation planning began immediately. The guest house needed substantial work. Every room required new bathrooms, air conditioning units, furniture, and fresh paint. The common areas needed complete redesign, and the electrical system required upgrading to handle modern loads. Kanya obtained quotes from contractors, showing me detailed estimates for each aspect of the renovation. The total came to approximately 1,200,000 baht, about $36,000, which would bring my total investment to $90,000. I was getting nervous about the escalating costs, but everything seemed legitimate. The quotes were from established contractors, the scope of work made sense, and Kanya was showing me every document and involving me in every decision. I transferred the renovation budget in August, and work began almost immediately. Kanya sent me daily photos showing progress workers tearing out old bathrooms, installing new fixtures, painting walls, laying tile floors. The transformation looked genuine and impressive, but in September, problems began emerging. Kanya reported that the electrical work was more extensive than initially quoted. The entire building needed rewiring, adding another 300,000 baht to costs. Then the air conditioning units the contractor had ordered were delayed, and substitute units cost more. Then city inspectors required additional fire safety equipment. Each issue came with explanations that sounded plausible and documentation I couldn't read because it was in Thai. Kanya would show me official-looking forms and quotes, translating the key points, and I'd approve additional transfers because walking away meant losing everything I'd already invested. By October, I'd transferred an additional 600,000 baht beyond the planned renovation budget. My total investment was now 3,600,000 baht, approximately $108,000, which was significantly more than planned, but still within my financial capacity. But I was feeling anxious. The guest house still wasn't open. Every time I asked about an opening date, Kanya had reasons for delay. Licensing wasn't complete, final inspections hadn't happened, furniture delivery was delayed. The excuses were always reasonable individually, but collectively they created a pattern that made me uncomfortable. I suggested visiting the property to check progress personally. Kanya became defensive. "Why don't you trust me?" she asked, hurt evident in her voice. "I'm there almost every day supervising work. Do you think I'm lying to you?" The guilt was effective. I backed off, apologizing for questioning her, reassuring her I trusted her completely. But privately, my doubts were growing. In November, Kanya reported another crisis. The contractor had discovered structural problems in the building's foundation that required immediate repair or the property wouldn't pass inspection. The cost would be another 400,000 baht. "This is getting out of control," I said. "We've already spent 3,600,000 baht, and now you need another 400,000? When is this going to end?" Kanya cried, explaining that she was as frustrated as I was, that these problems were unexpected, that we were so close to opening we couldn't give up now. "If we don't fix the foundation, we lose everything," she said. "The building won't pass inspection, and we can't legally operate. We've already invested over 3 million baht. Are you willing to lose all of that because you won't invest another 400,000? The logic was coercive but difficult to argue with. I'd already invested $108,000. Walking away meant losing everything. Investing another $12,000 might salvage the project. I transferred the money, bringing my total investment to 4 million baht, $120,000, which represented nearly a third of my total retirement savings. By December, 6 months after purchasing the property, the guest house still wasn't open. Kanya's explanations for delays were increasingly vague paperwork issues, licensing delays, contractor problems. And she'd started becoming distant, spending less time with me, canceling plans frequently with last-minute excuses about work or family obligations. My instincts, honed by 3 decades in cybersecurity where trusting the wrong person could compromise entire systems, were screaming that something was wrong. But I'd invested too much, not just money, but emotional capital to admit I might have made a catastrophic mistake. On Christmas Eve, I insisted on visiting the guest house property. Kanya made excuses, but I was firm. We drove there together, and when we arrived, my worst fears were confirmed. The property was indeed under renovation, but the work was minimal. A few rooms had been painted, one bathroom had been partially updated, but nothing close to the comprehensive renovation I'd funded. The property looked mostly abandoned, with construction materials scattered around and no evidence of active work. "Where's all the work?" I asked, my voice shaking. Kanya's face was unreadable. "The contractor has been slow. I've been trying to push them, but..." "Kanya, I've given you 4 million baht. Where's the money?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, "There were other expenses. Family problems I didn't tell you about. My mother needed surgery. My sister had debts. I used some of the renovation money to help them, planning to replace it later. But you stole from me." "I didn't steal. I borrowed temporarily. I was going to pay it back once the business was profitable." I left her standing there and drove back to my apartment alone, my hands shaking so badly I probably shouldn't have been driving. I'd been scammed. Systematically, professionally, completely scammed by a woman I'd trusted, cared for, and planned a future with. But unlike most victims, I had a crucial advantage. I was an IT security professional with decades of experience tracking digital criminals and gathering evidence, and I wasn't going to just walk away. I spent Christmas Day alone in my apartment, and the initial shock and devastation gradually transformed into something colder and more focused analytical rage. I'd spent 35 years in cybersecurity, investigating fraud, tracking digital criminals, securing systems against people who thought they were smarter than the protections I'd built. I knew how to gather evidence, how to follow digital trails, how to build prosecutable cases. Kanya had made a catastrophic miscalculation. She'd targeted me believing I was just another lonely old foreigner, easy to manipulate and unlikely to fight back. She had no idea I possessed the exact skills needed to dismantle her operation completely. I began the investigation methodically, starting with documentation. I had copies of every bank transfer, every email exchange, every Facebook message Kanya and I had ever sent. I downloaded all of it, organized it chronologically, and began analyzing patterns. The first thing I discovered was that Kanya's Facebook profile, the profile she'd used to contact me, contained metadata indicating it had been created less than a year before we met. Her claimed work history at the hotel couldn't be verified through any legitimate channels. The phone number she'd given me was registered to a prepaid SIM card, not a contract in her name. I contacted the hotel where she claimed to work. They had no employee named Kanya Waraset and never had. The professional photos she'd used were staged specifically to create a false identity. Next, I examined the property ownership documents. The company we'd supposedly created together existed legally, but the share structure was different from what the lawyer had explained. Kanya owned 90% of shares, not 51%. The shareholder agreement that was supposed to protect me had never been properly filed or registered. The lawyer who'd prepared our documents, I researched him and discovered he'd been disbarred 2 years earlier for facilitating real estate fraud. He was still presenting himself as a practicing attorney, but he had no legal standing. Everything had been fabricated. The documents that looked official were forgeries or improperly filed. The company structure that was supposed to protect me was legally worthless. The contractor's quotes Kanya had shown me were likely fake or inflated with kickbacks going back to her. I'd been comprehensively defrauded by what was clearly a professional operation, not an opportunistic individual scam. Over the following week, I expanded my investigation. Using techniques I'd employed throughout my IT career, I traced Kanya's digital footprint beyond the identity she'd presented to me. I found other Facebook profiles, dating site accounts, forum posts, all under slightly different names but sharing, identifying markers that confirmed they belonged to the same person. And I found other victims. Through these various online identities, I discovered Kanya had been running similar scams for at least 3 years. There was a British man who'd invested in a bar business that never materialized, an Australian who'd funded a coffee shop that existed only on paper, a German who'd purchased investment land that turned out to be unleased agricultural property. I contacted each of these men, explaining who I was and what I'd discovered. 2 responded, the British man and the Australian, both shocked to learn they weren't Kanya's only victim. The British man had lost approximately £40,000. The Australian had lost about 60,000 Australian dollars. Neither had pursued legal action. Both had simply written off the loss and returned to their home countries, too embarrassed or defeated to fight. "What are you planning to do?" the British man asked during our phone conversation. "I'm going to destroy her," I said simply. "I'm going to gather every piece of evidence, identify everyone involved in her network, and I'm going to make sure she goes to prison." "The Thai police don't care about foreigners getting scammed," he warned. "They'll tell you it's a civil matter and send you away." "Then I'll make them care," I said. I hired a private investigator in Chiang Mai, a former Thai police officer named Somchai, who specialized in fraud cases. I paid him 200,000 baht, about $6,000, to conduct surveillance on Kanya and compile evidence of her activities. Somchai was thorough and professional. Within 2 weeks, he'd located Kanya's actual residence, not the apartment she'd claimed to share with her sister, but a condo in a relatively expensive building near the Ping River. He photographed her with another foreign man, an older gentleman who appeared to be European. He tracked her movements, documented her connections, and identified several individuals who appeared to be part of her network, other women running similar scams, men who facilitated property fraud, the fake lawyer who prepared fraudulent documents. Most importantly, Somchai confirmed that Kanya was already working on her next target. The European man in the photographs was a 65-year-old Belgian who'd recently retired to Chiang Mai. Somchai's surveillance suggested the Belgian had already transferred money to Kanya for a supposed restaurant investment. "She's extremely professional," Somchai reported. "This isn't amateur fraud. She works with an organized group that identifies targets, creates believable cover stories, and extracts maximum money before disappearing. You're probably victim number 15 or 20 over the past 3 years. The information both horrified and energized me. I wasn't going to just recover my money, I was going to dismantle an entire criminal network. Over January and February, I dedicated myself completely to building an airtight case against Kanya. I wasn't working, I had no other obligations, and I was motivated by a combination of righteous anger and professional pride. Someone had tried to outwit me, and I was going to prove they'd made a catastrophic mistake. I organized every piece of evidence into a comprehensive portfolio, financial documentation, every bank transfer I'd made to Kanya, totaling 4 million baht, the property purchase documents showing the fraudulent company structure, evidence that the renovation work was never completed despite my funding, communications where Kanya acknowledged receiving the money, digital evidence, complete archives of our Facebook messages, WhatsApp chats, and emails, screenshots of Kanya's multiple online identities, metadata showing when her various profiles were created, dating site profiles where she targeted foreign men, witness testimony, statements from the other victims willing to testify, testimony from the hotel where Kanya never worked, information from the disbarred lawyer's actual clients, surveillance evidence, photographs showing Kanya with multiple foreign men, documentation of her actual residence versus what she'd told me, evidence of her working with other individuals in the scam network. The portfolio was over 300 pages, professionally organized with English and Thai translations, indexed and cross-referenced. It was the kind of evidence package I'd prepared dozens of times for corporate fraud investigations, except this time it was personal. In March, armed with this evidence, I approached the tourist police in Chiang Mai, a specialized unit that handles crimes against foreign visitors. The officer I met with, Lieutenant Pornthep, was initially dismissive. "This sounds like a relationship dispute," he said. "You gave your girlfriend money, and the business failed. That's not a crime." I pulled out my evidence portfolio and spent the next hour walking him through everything: the fake identity, the multiple victims, the fraudulent documents, the organized network. I showed him that this wasn't a failed relationship, but systematic, premeditated fraud perpetrated by a professional criminal organization. Lieutenant Pornthep's attitude changed as he reviewed the evidence. "This is very comprehensive," he acknowledged. "Most foreigners come to us with complaints, but no documentation. You have everything we would need to pursue charges." "I want her prosecuted," I said. "Not just for what she did to me, but for the entire operation. I have evidence connecting her to at least 3 other confirmed victims, and possibly many more." Lieutenant Pornthep nodded slowly. "I'll forward this to our fraud investigation unit. But Mr. Harris, you should understand that even with excellent evidence, the Thai legal system moves slowly. Prosecution could take a year or more, and there's no guarantee of conviction." "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I'll stay in Thailand as long as it takes to see this through." The investigation began officially in late March. The police conducted their own surveillance, interviewed witnesses, and verified the evidence I'd provided. In April, they executed a search warrant on Kanya's condo, seizing computers, phones, documents, and financial records. The search uncovered even more than I'd suspected. Kanya had meticulous records of her scams, a spreadsheet listing targets, amounts extracted, methods used. She'd defrauded at least 16 foreign men over 3 years, accumulating approximately 12 million baht, roughly $360,000. She'd been living extremely well on the proceeds: expensive condo, designer clothes, frequent travel. The money I'd given her for her mother's surgery had actually funded a vacation to the Maldives. The sister she supposedly supported didn't exist. Everything had been lies. Everything. The arrest happened on a Wednesday morning in early May, 7 months after I'd discovered the fraud. Police coordinated the timing to catch Kanya meeting with the Belgian man she'd been targeting the encounter. Somchai had photographed months earlier. I watched from a distance as plainclothes officers approached the cafe where they were having breakfast. Kanya saw them coming and tried to flee, but she was blocked and detained within seconds. The Belgian man looked confused and frightened, probably unsure if he was also being arrested. Lieutenant Pornthep invited me to observe Kanya's initial questioning at the station. She was brought into the interview room in handcuffs, and when she saw me sitting beside the lieutenant, her face went through a sequence of emotions: shock, anger, fear. "You did this," she said to me in English. ignoring the Thai officers. "You did this to yourself," I replied calmly. "You chose to defraud people. You chose to steal. I just documented it." The interview was conducted primarily in Thai, but Lieutenant Pornthep occasionally translated key points for me. Kanya initially denied everything, claiming our business deal had simply failed due to bad luck and mismanagement. But when confronted with the evidence from her seized computers, the spreadsheet of victims, the communications with her network, the fake identities, she eventually stopped denying and sat in sullen silence. She was formally charged with multiple counts: fraud for the fake business investment scheme, computer crimes for using false online identities to target victims, document forgery for the fake contracts and company documents, operating an illegal business for running scams without proper registration. The charges carried a maximum sentence of 15 years imprisonment, though Lieutenant Pornthep cautioned that actual sentences were usually much lighter, especially for first-time offenders. "If she's convicted, she'll probably serve 2 to 3 years," he said. "Maybe less with good behavior." It wasn't as much as I wanted, but it was something. More importantly, her arrest generated media coverage. Thai news outlets covered the story, foreign retiree fights back against romance scammer, and several newspapers interviewed me about the case. The publicity served two purposes. It warned other potential victims about romance scams targeting foreigners in Thailand, and it sent a clear message to other scammers. Not all targets would be passive victims who quietly disappeared after being defrauded. I also used the publicity to locate additional victims. After the news stories ran, 4 more foreign men contacted me. 2 Americans, 1 Canadian, 1 Australian, all of whom had been scammed by Kanya or her network. The total known victims now numbered 20, with total losses approaching $500,000. The trial began in November, nearly a year after I'd discovered the fraud. Thai courts moved slowly, and the process was bureaucratic and frustrating. Multiple hearings, endless paperwork, testimonies that had to be translated and notarized. But I attended every session, sitting in the courtroom, watching Kanya try to maintain her composure as evidence was presented. The prosecution used the portfolio I'd compiled, enhanced with additional evidence seized from her computers and from other victims who'd agreed to testify. Kanya's defense attorney attempted several strategies. He argued that I'd entered the business arrangement voluntarily, that the failure of the guest house was due to unforeseen complications rather than fraud, that Kanya had acted in good faith. But the evidence was overwhelming. The fake identity, the fraudulent documents, the multiple simultaneous victims, the spreadsheet documenting her systematic approach, it all painted a clear picture of organized, premeditated fraud. The judge delivered her verdict in March, 14 months after Kanya's arrest. Guilty on all charges, sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, with possibility of early release after serving 2/3 of the sentence for good behavior. It wasn't 15 years, but it was something. Kanya would spend at least 2 years in a Thai prison, and she'd have a criminal record that would make it much more difficult to run similar scams in the future. More importantly, several members of her network were also charged and prosecuted. The fake lawyer received his own prison sentence. 2 women who'd been working with Kanya on similar scams were arrested. The network was effectively dismantled. As for recovering my money, that was less successful. Thai authorities froze Kanya's bank accounts, seizing approximately 800,000 baht, about $24,000. After legal fees and the investigators' costs, I recovered roughly $12,000 of my $120,000 investment. It wasn't enough, but it was more than most victims recovered, which was typically nothing. I also recovered something more valuable than money: my dignity. I'd refused to be a passive victim. I'd used my professional skills to fight back, and I'd won. I didn't leave Thailand after Kanya's conviction. In fact, I'm still here now, 3 years later, living in Chiang Mai and working as an informal advocate for foreign victims of romance scams. The publicity from my case had an unexpected consequence. Foreign men living in Thailand, or considering moving here, started contacting me, asking for advice about relationships with Thai women, about business investments, about warning signs they should watch for. I started a blog documenting my experience and providing practical advice for expats. I gave talks at expat group meetings about fraud prevention. I consulted with several other victims who were considering pursuing legal action against their scammers, helping them organize evidence and navigate the Thai legal system. I partnered with Thai police to develop educational materials about romance fraud, helping them understand how to work more effectively with foreign victims who often struggled with language barriers and cultural differences. Through this work, I've helped about a dozen other victims pursue successful prosecutions against their scammers. Not all cases resulted in convictions, but several did, and even unsuccessful prosecutions often led to scammers fleeing Thailand or ceasing their operations. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who got scammed and decided to fight back instead of accepting defeat. But that fight has given my retirement more purpose than I ever expected. I'm 63 years old now. I live comfortably on my remaining savings and my pension. I've dated occasionally Thai women and expats, but I'm much more cautious now, much slower to trust. The experience with Kanya damaged something fundamental in my ability to take people at face value. But I don't regret staying in Thailand. The country itself didn't betray me, one criminal did. And by staying and fighting, I've hopefully made it slightly harder for people like Kanya to victimize lonely foreigners looking for companionship and purpose. Kanya was released from prison 8 months ago after serving 20 months of her 3-year sentence. I received notification from the police when she was released, and I tracked her for a while through my investigator contacts. She left Chiang Mai and moved to Pattaya, attempting to start fresh in a new city with a new identity. But the criminal record follows her, and the publicity from her case makes it difficult for her to operate the way she used to. I heard through the Expat network that she tried running another romance scam in Pattaya, but the target, an Australian man who'd read about my case, immediately recognized the pattern and reported her to police. She's currently facing new charges there. Some people ask me if I feel vindicated by her continued struggles. The truth is more complicated. I'm satisfied that she faced consequences for her crimes, but I don't take pleasure in her suffering. She's a product of a system where economic desperation drives people toward criminal behavior, and while that doesn't excuse what she did, it provides context. What I do take satisfaction in is knowing that I refuse to be a passive victim. I could have returned to America, defeated, accepted the loss, and spent the rest of my life bitter about the experience. Instead, I fought back, used my professional skills to build a prosecutable case, and turned my personal disaster into a resource that's helped dozens of other people avoid similar fates. The financial loss still stings. $108,000 is a lot of money, and recovering only $12,000 means I'm significantly less financially secure than I would have been. But I can still live comfortably in Thailand, and I have purpose that goes beyond simply existing day to day. I've learned several important lessons from this experience. First, being educated, successful, and cautious doesn't make you immune to scams. Kanya targeted me specifically because I was intelligent and successful. People like me are confident in our judgment and less likely to believe we could be fooled. That confidence is exactly what made us vulnerable. Second, romance scams are professional operations run by skilled criminals who've perfected their methods through repetition. They're not opportunistic amateurs, but practiced experts who know exactly which psychological buttons to push. Third, the best defense against scams is not cynicism, but verification. I could have prevented this entire disaster by independently verifying Kanya's identity, checking the property status myself, insisting on transparent accounting. But I trusted instead of verifying, and that trust cost me. Fourth, fighting back is possible, but it requires resources, skills, and determination that most people don't have or don't want to deploy. I could fight because I had IT security skills, because I could afford an investigator, because I had the time and motivation to pursue justice. Most victims don't have these advantages, and that's why scammers usually get away with their crimes. Finally, the expat community in Thailand needs to do better at warning newcomers about romance scams without descending into racist stereotypes about Thai women. Most Thai people are honest and kind, but there are professional criminals who target foreigners, and we need to acknowledge that reality while not painting entire populations with the same brush. I'm now working on a book documenting my experience and providing a practical guide for expats about recognizing and responding to fraud. The working title is The Scammer's Mistake: How One Victim Fought Back. I hope it will help others avoid my mistakes or give them tools to fight back if they become victims. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over when I discovered Kanya's betrayal. I'd lost a huge amount of money, been comprehensively deceived by someone I loved, and felt like the world's biggest fool. But by refusing to accept victimhood, by turning my professional skills toward justice, and by using my experience to help others, I transformed disaster into purpose. Kanya thought she'd broken me. Instead, she made me dangerous. I'm still in Thailand, still helping people, still fighting scammers when I can. And while my retirement isn't what I originally imagined, it's become something more meaningful than passive leisure. Kanya tried to destroy me. Instead, I destroyed her operation, helped dismantle her network, and turned my story into a warning that's protected dozens of other potential victims. She picked the wrong target, and I made sure she regretted every lie. If this story inspired you, or if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it widely. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories about fighting back against scammers. Remember, you don't have to be a passive victim. Sometimes, the best revenge is justice. Thank you for listening.